Chuck, you are a speaker, sales consultant, sales trainer, and decorated veteran.
Yes. Help is the most powerful word in the English language. It will stop men in Armani suits on the streets of Manhattan when it's snowing. I did it. I know it works.
The absolute best salespeople that I meet, including yourself, they're great storytellers.
We want people to remember us, right? They won't. We want them to remember all the wisdom that we tossed out. They won't. They'll remember the jokes and the stories. Stories sell. It seals the image in the customer's mind, in the buyer's mind.
Chuck, thank you for taking the time.
Raj, thank you for the invitation. This is great.
You are a speaker, sales consultant, sales trainer, and decorated veteran.
Yes.
You've been in sales for decades.
Yep.
You were the highest producer of an 1,100 person sales team at AT&T.
That's hard to imagine, isn't it?
It's very hard to imagine. And not because I don't think you're a great salesperson, but because 1,100 people is a large sales team.
It's a big team. And that was just one of several. AT&T was the largest corporation in the world at the time. They had 1 million employees. I was on a first name basis with half of them. I mean, it's just enormous how big. So they had to break things down. And the division that I was in, it was a fortunate time because it was financial services. And financial services was going through an evolution. At the same time, AT&T was bringing out some new applications and software and hardware. So the stars aligned, and I just happened to have the right situation so that I could come out with the big numbers.
I want to get through some of the other parts of the intro, but you said something that was so interesting that I got to ask you about now.
Okay.
So you said 1 million people, you were on a first name basis with them. I'm sure you're joking, but do you have a method you use to remember people's first names? Because I'm sure in your world, remembering someone's name is one of the most important things you can do.
Raj, that is a principle that's very important, that we remember the person's name and remember their face. So if we see them somewhere, we can call them by name, right? I have never had the ability to remember names. The way my brain is wired, I have a learning disability. So the way my brain is wired, I'll give you an example. We moved to a new town when I was 15. I didn't know anybody. So one day this girl comes up to me in high school and she says, we're having a function at a picnic at our church on Saturday afternoon. Why don't you come as my guest? Well, she couldn't drive. I couldn't drive. So I had my mother drop me off. Could not remember her name or what she looked like. So I'm standing there. Finally, this girl walks up and says, glad you could make it. I figured this must be her, but I can't remember her name. And then somebody came up and called her by name, Kay. You know, that's a letter of the alphabet. You would think if I could remember any name, it would be K, but I don't have that ability. Now, I say that for a reason. Yes, that's important. And yes, the principles are important, but if you lack one of them or 2 or 3 of them, don't let that stop you. You find a way to work around it. I don't have a degree. Because I can't learn from books, I don't have a degree. At AT&T, you couldn't go into sales unless you had a degree, preferably an MBA. They put me in sales because I demonstrated as a technician that I had some sales capabilities. However, I was a technician for 10 years before they finally said, we think you could make it in sales. So then I went. Learn what you need to learn. Do what you're capable of doing. A buddy of mine, Dan Burris, has Burris Research Institute, and he has a sign on his desk that reminds him, I will only do those things that only I can do. So you look at this business you've built here. Do you try to do everything? Are you going to be the receptionist? Are you going to be the detail person? Or are you going to concentrate, as you have, I know you have, on the big picture? Where could this organization go? You have an extraordinary idea. And people, how many people came to you and said, oh, you can't do that. You'll never do that. We've never done it that way before. And yet you knew enough to know it can be done, should be done, and it will be done, And then you did the magic thing. Wherever you have a weakness, you found somebody who had that as a strength. I made some major sales at AT&T, as you might imagine. I made a lot of little sales, but some big ones. Never made one by myself. The customer would say, we need this. Well, we don't do that, but we could do that. In fact, I had a client. He had worked for AT&T as a technician, and we had worked together. Then he got promoted into sales, and then this customer invited him into coming over and being his number 2 guy. Well, now this company's phone bill is $2 million a month. The phone bill is $2 million a month, wow. And this guy's in charge of it. And he was mean as a snake. He knew too much about AT&T. He knew all the shortcuts. He called me to come out to his office one day, so I went out, went in his office. He kicked the door shut with his foot, so I knew I was in trouble. He handed me a cocktail napkin, and on this cocktail napkin, there was a circuit drawn out. And I looked at it. He said, I want you to sell me that. I said, we can't sell you that. It's not in the tariff. We're regulated by the FCC. He knew all of that. He said, yeah, I know, but I want you to sell me that. And I looked at it and I said, well, what would this be worth to you? And we talked it through. Raj, this one sale would be 1.5 times my annual quota.
Wow.
Was I excited?
How many years in were you?
By then, I was in my 3rd year in sales. I said, okay, I'll see what I can do. So I went to an engineer, and I said, can we, I knew how to wire it. If they had told me to go wire it up, I could do it, because I've been a technician for a long time. So I went to an engineer. I said, can we do this? He said, no, it's not in the tariff. I said, I know it's not in the tariff, but electronically, will this work? He said, well, yeah, you just run a jumper from here to here, and you change these settings. I said, cool. What would we charge for that? He said, I don't do rates and tariffs. You have to go talk to rates and tariffs. So I went to rates and tariffs. I said, how would we charge for something like this? They said, we don't do that. It's not in the. I said, I know it's not in the tariff, but if we did this, what would it cost the company to provide this service at this level, the number the man had given me? And they ran the numbers, took them a couple of weeks. Our ROI on that was going to be 300%. I mean, it was enormous. He's going to make a lot of money on it. We're going to make a lot of money on it. Almost never got it through. Finally, I got approval from headquarters. We were going to do that. Today, that idea is known as caller ID. Now, he wasn't the only one that saw that we could do that. There were a lot of people around the country, but we look at that, I look at that, and I say, our customers know a lot, and they have some good ideas. And when they come and say, could you do this for me? Our first response should not be, never done that before, can't do it, shouldn't do it, won't do it. There's all kinds of regulations that will also never approve it. Our first response should be, let me see. And we should always ask, well, what would that be worth to you? The greatest sales trainer I ever heard of, was a man named Fred Herman. Few people have heard of him. He wrote a book called KISS, Keep It Simple, Salesperson. And he was on the Mike Douglas show once. Mike Douglas had a afternoon show like the Nighttime Tonight Show or whatever. He didn't know this, but the sidekick, the guy like Ed McMahon was for Johnny Carson, the sidekick was going to make a fool out of Ed. And so, and his name just left me again, but Fred Herman, not Ed, Fred. So Mike Douglas is being nice to him, and the sidekick is giving him all kinds of grief. And the one rule Fred had was, no one is entitled to the title of best salesperson or greatest salesperson in the world. There is no greatest salesperson. In every company, in every industry, in every market, there are great salespeople. So he's out there. Mike Douglas is being nice to him. This producer says, so you're the greatest salesperson in the world, huh? And Fred tried to say, well, nobody deserves it. And the man cut him off. He said, if you're such a great salesperson, why don't you sell me that ashtray right there? And Fred said, well, you don't smoke. What would you do with an ashtray? He said, I would put it on my dresser at night and put my keys and change in it. And Fred said, well, what would something like that be worth to you? He said, $1. He said, I'll sell it to you for $1. We're 2 questions into the process. He's closed the sale with an antagonistic customer. So what we learn is questions, questions, questions. See, the human mind cannot not respond to a question. If I ask you a question, your brain kicks into gear, doesn't it? See, you just nodded. Okay. What does a Hershey bar look like?
I'm thinking about it.
There's a picture of a Hershey bar, right? So we use question. The gift of gab will cause you to lose miserably in sales. It's all about asking questions, but there's only one question you have to be able to answer. Why is it in my customer's best interest they do what I want them to do right now? Why is it in Raj's best interest that he buy my widget right now? Okay, I just showed up. I don't know the answer to that question. So Raj, what are the top 3 goals you've set for 2024? What obstacles have you identified that might prevent you from making those goals? And what exciting things are happening? And every time you answer a question, I say 3 words. And what else?
So you're almost like a therapist. In the sense that you're asking leading questions.
I want to find out what's important to you. Now, you know I'm a sales guy, so you're going to kind of hedge it. You're going to put the wall up. You're going to be careful about what you say. But if you sense that I am sincere, I really want to help your company grow. I really want to help you as an individual grow. Managers, need to understand when you're managing a person, you're helping them do or become what they would like to do or become. So if your goal, I had a technician that I worked with, his goal was to be a professional skydiver. Okay, we're working over here with wires and relays and electronic stuff. He wanted to be a skydiver. So we would go to lunch or go on break sometimes, and I would talk about how are you going to build that business? You're going to need an airplane. You're going to need a pilot. And the more we talked about it, the more he realized, this is going to be much more difficult than I thought. Then he realized other people have done it. He could do it. So whether you're selling products and services, whether you're managing, if you're a parent, if you're just trying to recruit people into the community or your church to do something, you still have to answer that question. Why is it in their best interest they do what I want them to do now? We have ongoing clients. You have ongoing clients. They change. So just because they bought from you last year for this reason doesn't mean they're going to buy from you this year for the same reason. And so you start, well, how's business? And what does 2024 look like for you? And what can I help you achieve? You can go one level further. If you've been around a while, I don't recommend this for rookies, okay? I don't want to know necessarily what Raj wants to do with his business this year. I want to know what Raj's customers want to do this year that Raj could help them do. Now, see, if I help you help your customers, your business is going to grow, isn't it?
And that takes truly a deep understanding of not only what you're selling, but also your client's business as well.
Exactly. You can have, Zig Ziglar used to say, you can have anything you want if you help enough other people have what they want. Well, I know what you want. You want to grow your business. I also have a feeling you'll never be satisfied. You always wanted to go to the next level. You want to expand vertically or expand horizontally. And that's great. That's why you've been the success that you are. So I need to understand who are you selling to and what are they buying from you? What do they expect? Now, if they expect a faster turnaround, let's say, okay, I'm going to talk to you about improving your productivity for the purpose of attracting more clients who want that speed, that turnaround. If they're saying, wow, we're using AI now. And I come to you, Raj, what are you doing in AI? Well, I'm not doing anything in AI. Let me help you with that so that you can help your clients. Now, when you have a need, who's the first person you're going to call?
Your salesperson. That's been so helpful.
That's right. That's right. And it's common sense. Don't fake it. That's like using a script. Okay, I'm supposed to ask you about your business. The customers can read it. I read recently that 93% of selling now happens at the subconscious subliminal level. Body language, intonation of the voice, choice of words, and all those things. So if we're not sincere, the customer can read it like a book. The Chuckism is you cannot fool kids, dogs, and customers. They know who's shooting straight with them. A baby won't go to an angry adult. If the dog doesn't like you, I don't like you either. So we want to look at what are we doing for the customer. If a rookie salesperson wants to accelerate their growth, look at two prepositions. The prepositions are to, T-O, and for, F-O-R. When you're selling something to the customer, you think you're doing something to them or for them?
It should be for them.
Exactly. Now, if I'm trying to make my quota, I'm trying to get my commission check, I'm trying to keep my numbers up, that's doing something to them. So what can I do for them? Then just take that one level deeper. What can they do for their customers based on what I'm doing to support them? It's fun.
That's one way that I've never really thought about sales. We're in the apartment business.
Yep.
We're renting apartments to the end person.
The end user.
It's not a chain, the end user. But, maybe if we're thinking about it, like if we provide this person with the best living experience possible, then that allows them to go to work, be productive at work, and not have, a maintenance issue, for example, to worry about in their apartment. And if we take care of that for them, they're going to be that much more successful. And maybe there's no delinquency, or maybe, they want a bigger apartment or something along those lines. And I'm just thinking outside of the box.
You just exposed your secret. You want to provide them with the best living experience.
Yes.
Not
Correct.
building, not tangible. What is the living experience? And see, as long as you're thinking like that, you're always going to be successful. Anybody can rent an apartment. There are people who need housing. We know that. I live in Arizona. There's a new development going. They're buying complete city blocks and putting in 5-story communities. It's just amazing what's out there. So a lot of people can do that. But I look at some of them and I think, if I was going back to apartment living, I would love to live there.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't want to live there. So what's my criteria? And if you learn my criteria and you have a huge inventory, you have the right people, the right places, you can put them together. But an apartment is not an apartment. And when you said living experience, I just lit up inside. I thought, yep, this man has nailed it.
and I find, at least in our business, I'm sure sales roles or environments are similar. The little things make a big difference.
Yes.
Smiling, the please, thank yous, the just manners and
Yep.
being pleasant to be around.
Yep. For apartment managers and for people in your industry, 100% occupancy, that's the goal. So we don't ever want to have a vacancy. I had rental property for a while. I didn't want to be vacant for a day. But when we look at it and a prospect shows up, let me show you, you want a 2-bedroom or a 3? You want a 1, 2, or 3? Okay, let me show you this one. Wrong. That's commodity selling. Tell me a little about yourself. What do you like most and least to do in life? And how could a new living environment change your life? What are you really looking for? And of course, I'm looking for people like me who are, I'm never going to retire, neither are you, but I'm semi-retired, so I want to be around some folks that have been around the block a few times, and I like to have certain amenities. If you stop there, you're going to lose. You need to use those 3 words. And what else? Well, now that you mention it, I'd also like to have this. And what else? Okay, but don't keep saying, and what else? Find other ways of wording it. Well, what about a workout facility or gymnasium? Oh, yeah, I go 3 or 4 days a week when I'm off the road and work out. Yeah, that'd be great. You just keep asking what's important. Now, here's the secret behind it. I've been in a conversation with a professor in Washington State for 20 years. He said that in a B2B transaction, a business transaction, which leasing an apartment would be, we don't get the truth, we don't get the real answer in the first 5. In an interpersonal conversation, we don't get the real answer in the first 10.
That's
My
interesting.
wife is a counselor. And so when he told me that, I went and checked it out with her. She said, well, yeah, they teach that in college. The couple comes in for marriage counseling. Oh, what's the problem? He won't put the cap back on the toothpaste. That's not the problem. The problem is the affair he had with his secretary 10 years ago. There's that kind of, but you have to drill down and find it. And I found in my sales consulting, dealing with CEOs of SMB, small to medium businesses, as well as division heads of Fortune 500 companies. If I just keep probing, asking, well, what about this area? And they'll say, we're doing pretty good there, but that reminds me we have this problem over here. It's called truth on the installment plan. You finally get down to the real reason, and then you can turn around and go back up. Well, if that was resolved, what would that do for you? Well, it would eliminate that problem. And what else? Well, we would save this money. And what else? We wouldn't be spending time doing that. Really? Well, if you weren't spending time doing that, what would you spend time doing? Well, we'd do this. And what would that be worth to you? I'm genuinely interested in how people can improve their lives. And I think that's why I've been successful in sales. If I was doing it just to make another sale, just to upsell, just to add something on to the package or whatever, I don't think I'd be as successful.
Do you think not having that genuine interest is what makes it obvious to the potential client or consumer when you're just going through the motions? Because when you say the "and what else" or "what would that mean for you," I'm thinking of sales calls that I've been in where I've had those questions asked to me, and I know that they're just going through a process.
Exactly.
And then I'm also thinking of times where I've opened up and I didn't realize it. I didn't know that I was being sold to.
That's right. And it's the difference in the person asking the questions. They come across as genuine. The secret, another secret to sales is something called pre-call planning. Think through the sales call. That does not mean memorize the script. That does not mean practice with the script on the computer. When they say this, you go to this screen, and when they say that, it's none of that. What do I know about the individual? Now, you make it easy. I go to your website, there you are. And I can hear your life story. I can hear what you're trying to accomplish. I can see your business. Well, if you're in a B2C world, that's kind of hard to do sometimes. What are you going to know about a renter when they show up? Well, not much. But you can show genuine interest. There's a study that I'm just getting into because it's going to be very deep and take a long time, but there is something that actually comes off of us as humans. You ever meet somebody in instant karma? Then you meet these other people and just can't seem to break through. Well, there is something there, and I'm told it's chemical. It's not psychological. So when we hit that relationship where we just like the person, then see how you're nodding? Then what happens is we can go a long way for them and with them. Watch your prepositions. Now, I'm going to do that to them. I'm going to go do some things for them and with them. It's a fascinating study. I don't think I'll ever figure it all out, but that's what I got so far.
Would you say, like, when we first met here, you gave me a compliment? Mm-hmm. Is that another way of, I don't want to say forcing a similar situation in terms of having someone like you, but just helping your case to have someone like you, if that makes sense?
Okay. The verb you used is correct.
Okay.
Gave. I gave you, we can find something good in almost everybody, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I have some drawbacks. There's some people, I don't know. That's gonna. But what we want to do is to break the ice by giving them something about them. When we first met, I could say, well, I'm glad to be here. You know that I've done all these wonderful things, and this is who I am, and I appreciate the opportunity to put my story out on your network. And no. You're an easy mark, by the way. I said tall and handsome, right? I mean, I was CNN subject matter expert on combat-related PTSD. Okay, so the first time I'm going on, I'm in the makeup room, and the interviewer comes in. His name is Victor Blackwell. Okay, I don't know Victor Blackwell. I've watched him, so I knew his personality style. I knew the kind of questions he would ask. The producer had already told me these are the questions, and we did some editing and so forth. So kind of knew what was going to happen, but didn't know him. So he comes in and he sits down. Now look at him. Victor Blackwell. Victor, the winner. Black, that's pretty obvious. Well is a deep resource. He said, oh, yeah. And he is. These people, we think they're just readers, they're called. They're on the reading the teleprompter, and they're the anchors and things like that. But there are some of them out there. I had lunch with Mike Wallace one day, and I was thinking, wow, this guy is deep. Well, everybody's deep in some subject matter. Now, you may be deep in a video game. I'm not interested. I don't play video games. But if I can find a connection with you, what are you deep into? You and I are both in business. We're business people. We're looking to share ideas. Then we can build on that. There's this term, relationship selling. All selling is relationship selling. What is the relationship built on? Okay, for me, I'm hoping it's mutual admiration, because I admire and appreciate what you've done here, what you've built. This is incredible. But if I build a relationship on price, okay, Victor, you want to buy some widgets? I got the lowest price widgets in town. How many can I put you down for? I will lose that sale to the person who has cheaper widgets.
Just on that relationship building, I hear from a lot of bankers. And by the way, though, before I say that, it is mutual admiration. I invited you on the show for a reason.
Yeah, we're two peas in a pod, let's admit it.
But I hear from a lot of bankers, for example, that they're relationship-based lenders. Mm-hmm. So a lot of them, and I love all of them, so I'm not knocking them. Their version of building that relationship or nurturing that relationship is going out for lunch once every 3 months or so.
Yep.
What would you recommend to salespeople in terms of truly building like that deep relationship or those shared connections, like you mentioned, business for us? And if it's a banker, for example, what can they connect with their client on?
I'm going to go back to your verb, give. Give something that has no potential of bringing a sale to you. Giving selflessly. Now, that's the definition of helping. Help is the most powerful word in the English language. It will stop men in Armani suits on the streets of Manhattan when it's snowing. I did it. I know it works. The psychopaths don't respond to that. And that's 3% of the population. I don't think you're one of those. So people want to be helped and want to help. And most people would rather help than be helped, especially us guys. We're macho. We don't. So what can a banker give to their customer? It's an article they just ran across online. In fact, this morning, I mentioned this to the group I spoke to this morning. I stumbled across this article. I need to send this to this gentleman, but I was in a rush to get out to the meeting, so I will do it when I get back to the hotel this afternoon. But that's not going to give me anything. It's part of his hobby. But he'll remember, Chuck remembers. Will it help him? Maybe. I've given things that don't help at all, but that's fine. I gave. Do you really care enough about the person? Now, for the banker, if they send someone an article about investing in one of the bank's instruments, that's not helping. That's called selling.
Right.
Okay. But what can you send? I'll give you an example. I bank with a major bank, and I won't mention any names because there's nobody here from Wells Fargo to defend them. And so my account was older than fax machines. I opened this account before anybody had a fax machine. And it was a community bank that was bought by another community bank that was bought by a state bank that was bought by a national bank that was bought by another national bank. Then it went to Wells Fargo. Well, that account was a mess. And I was getting all kinds of antsy letters, and we can't do this, and they were stopping things. And wait a minute. So I went down and I met Antonio. And I thought, okay, here we go. This is going to be, he's the branch manager. And we started going through all the different things. And he said, I will fix this. I will fix this. And I mean, it was a mess. My account number was 10 digits long. Today, account numbers are 12 digits long. We had to start with that, right? And he started going through, and I mean, he worked on it incessantly. And he's a major bank. So we got everything done. We signed a bunch of papers. Everything's done. And then I get another letter. And the way he responded to that, he didn't fix it. Now, in fact, he did fix it, but somebody up the chain somewhere hit the wrong key on a computer somewhere. He took total ownership of it and constantly apologized and thanked me. I'm not one of their major depositors. I'm not one of their major users. I got a personal account, checking account, business checking account, and a savings account, like everybody else in the world, right? And so he's doing all of this stuff for me. Do you think I refer business to him?
100%.
Yes. Wouldn't think of anybody else.
And that goes back to genuinely wanting to help.
That's right. And I would say, no, let me do this. I'll call. No. I will do it. He knew the keys on the computer to hit that would open doors that I wouldn't know and that kind of thing. Well, that's great. Can we do that? I fly Delta Airlines. I lived in Atlanta most of my life. So if you live in Atlanta, you fly Delta. And huge airline, lots of people. And now I'm starting to be treated like royalty with these people. I've had them come up to me, and I do have 5 million miles. I should say that. So that makes a difference, I guess. But
that's a lot of
miles. They would come up and say, we so appreciate your business. And my response is, I appreciate you keeping the airplanes in the air while I'm on them. In fact, this really struck me the other day. My sister passed away, and we had to go
Sorry to hear that.
Thank you. And so this flight attendant came up, and I'm back in coach because it was last minute, and there were no seats up front anywhere. So I don't mind. We're going. And she saw the 5 million mile thing, and she said, why are you back here? I said, it was last minute. My sister passed away. And she said, can I say a quick prayer? Now, we think about business as cold and heartless. We think about customers as demanding and unrelenting. And sometimes we think about our boss as asking more of us than we want to give. But we're all people. It's a very small planet. And when we start treating each other like the people that we are, magical things happen.
Would you say it's hard for a large organization? You have experience with AT&T, like we were discussing, to really have your entire customer service and sales department treating people like humans. I feel like it's probably impossible to do that in a really large organization, but you just gave a great example there.
It is impossible. I'm not saying that everybody at either of those two organizations is going to hit a home run every time. The fact that it's impossible doesn't mean we shouldn't try.
Great point.
Depending on which motivational speaker you're listening to, Thomas Edison made 100 light bulbs or 1,000 light bulbs or 10,000 light bulbs. We don't know. But every time he made a light bulb, and actually he didn't make them, he had a team of engineers, he had 20 engineers working for him. But every time they made a light bulb that didn't work, their response was, there's one more way not to make a light bulb. So with your customer service people, with your sales people, they will not be any better than their leaders. So you want to start making some changes in the customer-facing, we call it, customer-facing positions. You start with the leaders. I had a small number of employees. I left AT&T, started my own company. Went from 1 million employees to 1 employee. Boy, was that rudely shocking. I couldn't dial a 4-digit number and get people to come in and help me. So eventually I started hiring people. We had a customer from hell. His name was Irv. We could not please Irv. There was nothing we could do. Irv would not break one of my rules. I had 2 rules. You can't ask us to do something under the table, and you can't have any sexual or racial innuendo. I mean, it's not language, innuendo. He wouldn't break either of those rules, but he was obnoxious, and he was hard to deal with, and he was demanding. And so I told everybody, if I'm off the road and I'm in the office, Irv calls, you put the call to my desk and I'll take it. If I'm on the road, tell Irv I will call him at my first break. And I had to do that. If I had a break and had something else I needed to do, I had to call Irv. So I'm standing in front of my employee's desk one day and the phone rings. We had a rule, when the phone rings, everything else stops, you pick up the phone. She picked it up, put it on hold. She said, Irv is on line 2. I rolled my eyes back in my head and said, Irv. I just gave her permission to be rude to Irv. That's how simple it is.
Right.
Now, the customer is not always right, but the customer is always the customer. If we cannot treat them well, if they can't have a better experience with us than they have with anybody else, we need to let them go. Go ahead.
I was just going to say one important thing that you really touched on there that a lot of companies don't do is, you said when the phone rang, everyone dropped whatever they were doing to answer the phone. And a lot of companies simply don't answer the phone. And that's step one of honoring your customer and putting the customer first.
Our rule was it never rings twice. In fact, because whatever's on the other end of that call is going to be better than anything we're talking about. Got this electronic key system, got this really nice phone system for the office, and understanding the network. This is back before cell phones. I modified the equipment so that it would recognize before the call came in. There's this electronic pulse that goes out to make sure that the circuit's good. So our equipment would trip, and quite often people would call us and we'd start talking to them before they heard an audible ring. And I had to do this because I spoke at the National Speakers Association, best practices. And they said, what are your best practices? One of them is, we learn to answer the phone before the second ring. And they said, oh, good. I just gave away one of my differentials. What's the next step? You answer the phone before the first ring. Well, that's impossible. If you think it's impossible, it is. I happen to know something about the network, so I modified our equipment. We can answer it before the first ring. It's not until you put it out there. Your job as a manager, as a leader, as the owner of this business, is to constantly raise the bar, not lower it for people who have not found a way to get over it yet or don't want to, but to continually raise it. When you see, you are where you are and I am where I am, because somewhere along the line, somebody stretched us beyond our perceived limitations. I don't think I can do that. We're going to have to. And we put on our big boy pants and we go and we make it happen. When you're doing that for a direct report, for the kid who lives next door, for your kids, for somebody in the community, when you do that for them, you're taking them to the next level. Did you hear the word, by the way? When you do that for them?
I didn't pick up on it at the time, but now I got it.
Well, there we have it. I had a client in Chicago. He had a pretty good business. He called me one day and he said, I've never fired a customer. I think I need to fire this customer. I said, well, okay, tell me the circumstances. And then he told me that whenever he called in, he was so mean and rude. He called into his call center. He had 6 females working in the call center. Quite often, one of them would run to the bathroom crying. I mean, you can't have a customer. I mean, people like that don't deserve a place on the planet. I said, well, if you fire him, you're going to have to replace his revenue. You have to replace the business. You got to go down. You got to come back up to not have anything. I said, so how much business did he do with you last year? And I hear the computer keys clicking. He said, $1,800. And so what were the margins? About 8%. Fire him. I mean, he said, I don't know how to fire him. Next time you're in Chicago, come with me. We'll go fire the customer. Raj, we went out, sat down, and we gave him that we think you would be better served and we know we would be better served. You know, that kind of sermon. He teared up on us. He said, your girls, his word, not mine. He said, your girls are the only people who were ever nice to me. I wanted to say, hello. It's not the world. It must be something coming off of you, right?
Right. That's I think very important to honor your customer, but also know that the customer is not always right, and sometimes you might have to, like you said, fire a customer. Earlier on in the conversation, you mentioned 5 million miles with Delta. Is that because of your speaking engagements? And if so, you've done 5,200 worldwide. You're in the National Speakers Association Hall of Fame, and you've published 7 books. But if it's because of those speaking engagements, how did you ultimately become such a successful, well-known speaker when you started off? I would imagine your first major job was that technician role with AT&T.
Yep. Well, here's what happened. I came home from Vietnam. My head was on sideways. That happens a lot, PTSD and all that. So they had trained me in electronics, which I never used in Vietnam. I used a gun. I thought maybe I could use that. And I went looking for an electronics job, and AT&T said, we will hire you as an entry-level technician. I thought, good. The recruiter said, you'll always have hamburger, you'll never have steak. We didn't lay anybody off during the Depression. I thought, job security, I like that. Pretty good income. Started off at $79.50 every week. And then after the first strike, I was in about 2 years, I was making $99 a week. And I was on my way to top pay, $127 a week. I was going to buy the governor's mansion. So I'm in there as a technician. Now, it's important that managers understand you have people who don't think like you and don't think the corporate line. And it's important that the corporate morals and vision and principles are obeyed. But sometimes somebody gets outside the box and there's actually a good idea there. So I bore easily. So I'm a technician, and they would give me these jobs to do. I would find a way of doing the job better by modifying the equipment. Well, Bell Labs heard about it, and they came down and looked at it, and they patented the idea. So I have some patents in electronics. So that doesn't make me a speaker, except that I talked on the phone to other technicians and to customers. I did some things outside the box, and my boss's boss said, you deserve to be in sales. And I didn't want to go to sales. I didn't own a suit, don't have a degree, can't speak in public, all these reasons why I can't go to sales. He was my stretcher. Try this. Lock eyes with the person and say, I want you to try this for me. We haven't known each other long, but if you did that to me, I would at least consider it.
Yeah, you're showing faith in that person's abilities and believing in them, like you were saying, right?
Can you see things in other people they can't see in themselves?
I think definitely. And I think people can see things in me that I don't see. We all have that blind spot, right?
There we go. So when I started speaking, I learned from Zig. I had some good people come alongside. I don't know why. I wrote and published a book, and maybe that had something to do with it. But so good people came alongside. Zig said he did 100 free presentations before he ever got paid for one. Well, so did I. Most of us did. The Kiwanis Club, the Rotary Club, the after dinner here and there. And I would always ask for feedback. Well, Chuck, you really shouldn't talk about that. Chuck, you did really good when you did this. So my book was on motivation, the theory of 21. For every person who will say yes, there's 20 who will say no for a positive response. You got to find that 21st person. You learned that the hard way starting this company, didn't you? And people say can't, should, and won't, and all that kind of stuff. Fine. So I'm doing motivational talks. And in the intro, it says I was AT&T's top salesperson. The CEO comes up and says, so you were, I said, yeah. Why don't you come train my salespeople? That's the dumbest thing I ever heard. Because if I could do it, anybody could do it. So I challenge anyone. If you think if you can do it, everybody can do it, think again. You have special talents and gifts. We're all created differently, right? Our DNA is different, so we know we're all different. And find out what that is. So how did I become a great speaker? Learned. Ask people. Look at the evaluations. One of my clients came up to me and he said, you're not charging enough for your speeches. I'm not going to pay you anymore, but going forward, you need to start asking for more money. We undervalue what we think comes easily for us, when in fact, that's our greatest value.
For you to overcome everything you've overcome in your life, learning disability was probably your first major obstacle or hurdle. You have to be someone who is self-motivated, thinking outside the box, trying new things. When you were in the military, you were also in a situation where you were kind of thrown into a leadership position and you had to think outside of the box. Is that correct?
To say the least.
Okay.
I tell CEOs, I got my first leadership position 3 months after leaving my teens. So 3 months ago, I was a teenager. Today, I'm a leader. Squad leader, Vietnam. And they said, you're responsible for yourself, your well-being, and 4 other men. They weren't men, they were boys like me. We were all getting drafted. 5 M16s, an M60 machine gun, M79 grenade launcher, 2 Jeeps, some proprietary gear, 2 radios. And I'm responsible for that as a recent graduate from the teen years. I was Army. We were attached to a Marine division that we were helping. There's a position called a forward observer. That's somebody who is far enough out that they can see the enemy, see how many there are, how are they armed, and what are they up to. That is a job reserved for an officer. I was a draftee. I'm a corporal. We didn't have any more lieutenants. They learned I had been to map reading school. I became the forward observer. On my command, giving them a 6-digit number, they would drop in 40 millimeter, 60 millimeter mortar, 105, 155 artillery, helicopter gunships, and on 2 nights, naval gunfire. Now, I didn't always get it right. That's where the PTSD comes from. So, yeah, I was thrust into that leadership position. Now, the kicker was my commanding officer was a graduate of West Point. At West Point, they teach all you need to know about conventional warfare. We were fighting a guerrilla war. He wrote me up for an Article 15 once. That's a misdemeanor. And he wrote me up for a court-martial once. That's a felony. I would have gone to Leavenworth Prison because I was disobeying direct orders. If we had done what he ordered me to do, none of us would have come home. Until last year, I said, but we all came home. I learned last year that one of them did not. After I left, he bought the farm, as we say. So I don't recommend disobeying the rules unless you're willing to pay the price if you're wrong. But thinking outside the box, yeah, sometimes.
That's really powerful, and I appreciate you sharing. So if I understand correctly, you would probably recommend that as long as you're not breaking any rules or laws, and as long as maybe you're not doing something that would get you fired, you should think outside of the box, or at least question why you're being told to do something a certain way.
Exactly. And can you find substantiation or justification for it? Now, for me, it was fairly easy. I was surrounded by a bunch of Marines. There's no love lost between the Army and the Marines until there's a firefight and we're all brothers. Shooting stops, we go back to being antagonistic or whatever. But I explained to them what my commanding officer was demanding that I do. And they would say, that doesn't work around here. Now, let's take it into business. You started a company. So on day one, I started a company. On day one, I was all the employees. I was number 1 sales guy in my company when I started it. I was also president, CEO, COO, and I cleaned the toilets. After a while, we realized we can't do it all, so we start bringing people on. But we think we can do their job better than they can because we did it first. That is so wrong. I brought my first employee in. I looked at her. I was desperate. I had a permanent part-timer, and she went to lunch one day and never came back. I'm on the road. So I flew back into Atlanta. I got up the next morning. I'm calling people. Does anybody know anybody who'd like to work for a professional speaker? That's nobody because of our egos. I said, does anybody know anybody who'd like to have a job? And my printer said she thought her sister-in-law was thinking about going back to work. I said, if I put a mirror under her nose, would it fog up? She said, yes. I said, she's hired, send her over. So open the door, and here's this no makeup, house dress. And I'm thinking, I'm trying to project an image here, but I'm working out of my house. Nobody's going to see her, but still. 9 years later, I was on my knees begging her to stay. She taught me something. You might want to write this down. I organize by the pile system. In this pile are these things, and in this pile are these things. I went out on the road. I said, look, the company is 21 associates. You answer the phone, 21 associates. Take a message every time I can. I'll call in, and we'll just kind of figure this stuff out. I came back in off the road after a few days. The piles were gone. She taught me something I've never forgotten. Alphabetizing. She put everything in a folder, put all the folders in the file cabinet, and wrote on the tab what was in the folder. This is magic. This is great. And my wife will tell you I'm not very good at it now because I organize by the pile system. But a turnaround that I did, a gentleman had a $30 million frozen pie company, and we had a lot to go through. So we finally got the thing even keel. And then we would meet every 6 months for breakfast. And one morning at breakfast, he said, Chuck, the one thing you taught me that was critical is to get out of the day-to-day. Let the people do they're putting new switch plate covers on the switches down at the plant. I need to get down there. He has learned nothing. And it's hard to turn loose. You know that. This company of yours is your baby. The people here are people that you are growing, you are nurturing. And because you are nurturing the people that you serve. Now, if somebody doesn't like their apartment, you'll hear about it. But if they love it, they really like it, it's changing their family, they're having family dinners again, they have a warm place to come home to, you never hear about that.
Yeah, I agree. It's very seldom you hear the positive feedback, and very often you hear the negative feedback or the second something goes wrong. But I guess that's human nature. I find myself going to a restaurant, for example, and I'll have a great experience, and I don't leave it on Google, even though I know it's important to them, because I'm just not thinking about it. Now, if I think about it and I consciously make that effort, I'll do it. But it's just, I think people need constant reminders to leave positive feedback or to let a company or person know that they're doing a great job. You were on the cutting edge when you were answering phones before they would ring. Yes. And now, again, you're on the cutting edge of technology. You're using AI and in sales and helping sales teams become more efficient, but also sell. I hope I'm saying this the right way. Increasing their prices while essentially doing it more efficiently. Can you speak on that and how you're using AI as a tool?
Oh, absolutely. And you said the right word, tool. AI is a tool. Do not use it as a process. Do not use it as a substitute. Don't copy and paste out of AI. And whenever I do a seminar like I did this morning, we had some people that, AI is going to give everybody the same basic answer. However, you take it and make it your own. It's a tool like any other tool. I've always taught value-added selling, which is selling on value, not price. You don't have to cut your price. Nobody ever bought anything on price, and we think we did. No, we compromised. I'm willing to give up that in order to pay a lower price. But if somebody showed me the value in that, I would buy that. There are things that I will pay extra for that you want. Do you play guitar?
I don't.
Okay, so if we went in a music store, they'd all look alike to you, right? You'd buy one on price. I go in music stores when I travel. I reject 99.9% of them because, they're just guitars, but there's that special. Okay, so we differentiate. AI not only increases productivity by taking some of the grunt work off of the salesperson and sales leader, but it can also help you increase your volume so you can sell more with no discounting. You sell faster, you sell better. How do we upsell the client? Okay, my client we have 5 products, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. My client's been buying 3 forever. I can't find a way to get them to move up to 4. Well, ask AI. Why would companies in this industry, why would a company in this market benefit from the 4 over the 3? And it will spit it back out. It's amazing. I teach you have to have the right opening question. So when we go in on a sales call, we establish rapport like you and I did this morning. Then we get into the sales call. Well, whoever asks the opening question takes initial control of the sales call. If we delay and the customer says, so why are you here? You lost. They asked the opening question. So I want to ask the opening question, but there are some rules. The opening question has to be something about the customer, not our products or service or company, that the customer has never heard before. You can't talk about your products, you can't talk about your services, you can't talk about your company, you can't talk about yourself. Raj, I've helped a lot of companies like yours. None of that. Go to AI, and I have seen it write beautiful opening questions. And they will address the industry, or they'll address the market. If you do your pre-call planning, guess what? You find out that people in the apartment industry now are looking at the fact that, wow, buying a house is becoming increasingly difficult. But people want what I learned from you, living experience, a life experience. And so now we can start bringing those things together. If I talk to you about that, I'm talking to you about stuff that's important to you. It's got nothing to do with what I do for a living. So AI is here. It's still a work in progress. When the internet first came along, we didn't know how to use the internet. We would go in and ask stupid questions and it would give us, okay, AI is the same way. ChatGPT is the one most people use. 4 is a nice upgrade. It has DALL-E in it. But it will learn the questions that you ask and it will start answering you based on what it knows about you. That's why they have you sign in. It's free, but they still have you sign in.
That makes sense. I actually didn't realize that it gets smarter based on your questions and what you're looking to achieve through use. Mm-hmm. I've used ChatGPT and Bard, I think, is the Google AI. I think I've used Claude as well.
I have some friends who use it.
Yeah, and to be honest, I like ChatGPT or OpenAI the most out of those three, although I would imagine Google is going to work hard to catch up at some point.
Everybody is going to work. Right now, if you use Microsoft Office, all of the apps have AI in them. That whole idea that we've been using for years where we start typing a word and it finishes it, that's sort of an AI. And it's growing, and it's nowhere near where it's going to be. That's why I caution everyone, get involved now. I'm an early adapter for some things, and I'm a late adapter for others. I'm still using Windows 10 and Windows 11 is out there. Well, there's some reasons for that I won't go into, but at some point, I know I'm going to have to upgrade, but for now, I'm good. If I want to move to the next level, I need a measurable, quantifiable, qualifiable reason to do that. I don't buy the latest and the greatest just because. One of the best financial advisors I know puts out a weekly newsletter, a blurb, and in his last one, he said, one of the big mistakes I made when I first got into financial planning was new car every year. It impresses people. You must be successful. You're driving a new car. No, you're not. You're losing that first year depreciation every year. You're upside down on the car every time you trade. So we want to look at what is the reason for moving up. If there's value there, that's why we call it value-added selling, they'll do it. You can quantify it.
That makes a lot of sense. I have like a million questions for you, but we're almost at the 1 hour mark. So I want to be respectful of your time.
Has it been that long?
Yeah, it's been an hour. So I got to get to the most important stuff. Unfortunately, I am looking forward to seeing you speak on Thursday at our Vistage meeting. And you're one of, I think, the top performing but most sought after speakers in the Vistage circuit as well. That's correct?
Yes.
So the 3 things I have for you, I'll ask the easy one first. How can people learn more about you or your company?
ChuckReaves.com. We spell Reaves, R-E-A-V-E-S. So just put Chuck, R-E-A-V-E-S in there and it'll take you to the website. Chuck at ChuckReaves.com is my email. So let me hear from you. If I can help you, I'd love to, but in many cases, I'm busy now. I know someone who can do it better than me. If you still want me, fine, but we'll go that way.
And that's tying into what you said early on, that you're looking out for the best interests of
of course,
potential customer or client or just somebody who's reaching out. Thank you for sharing that. We'll make sure we link it as well.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you this question because I've noticed a pattern with the absolute best salespeople that I meet, including yourself. They're great storytellers.
Yes.
Now, you said that because of the learning disability that you are not great at remembering names, although I'm questioning that because you were spitting out a lot of names as you were telling some stories. But you're an excellent storyteller. And do you have any tips, tricks, or a way that someone can develop that skill or that muscle? I think it's so important if you're in sales.
Okay. We want people to remember us, right? They won't. We want them to remember all the wisdom that we tossed out. They won't. They'll remember the jokes and the stories. Our memories work in pictures and images, not words and numbers. So when I'm presenting, you'll see it on Thursday, lots of images up there because that's going into the mind so people can remember us. When we tell a story, people see things. Before our generation, they thrived on radio and radio series. I still listen to the old programs when I can hear them because that was forcing an image. Now, if I tell a story to 20 people, they have 20 different pictures based on their life experience. It's based on education, experience, and environment. So you tell stories tied to what you want the customer to remember. Car salesman. I don't like that whole profession necessarily, but car salesmen will say something like, you came in for the sedan, for the minivan, for the family. Can you imagine having this red Corvette in your driveway and what the neighbors would think? You see that? Now, you just saw your driveway. You saw your neighbors. And it's all about making the picture. Now, if you buy this Corvette, the payments are going to be this much and they're going to be extraordinary and maintenance is very high. And the price of these tires, you don't want the car now. But if I picture it in your driveway, so use the stories, use humor carefully. It's easy to offend unknowingly. So I have to use humor kind of carefully, but stories sell. It seals the image in the customer's mind, in the buyer's mind.
And did you have that skill naturally, or is it something you consciously worked on and developed?
Wow, what a good question. I don't know. I guess maybe I cultivated it. Now, one thing that I'm glad you brought that up, record every sales call. Not some, every. I recorded the presentation this morning. I have 3 hours of me to listen to. I don't want to listen to 3 hours of me. How am I ever going to be any better if I don't? When I first started selling, I carried a Marantz. This was the professional cassette recorder that reporters carry, as big as an encyclopedia volume. I would go into the client's office and put it on their desk and say, I'm trying to be better as a salesperson. Do you mind if I record this? And I hit the record button before they could say, yes, I do mind. And I would go back and listen to it. Well, today, your smartphone will do that, and the customer doesn't even know that you're recording. I videotape as often as I can. Then I go back through the arduous process. Okay, I need to change that gesture. I listen to my recordings. We get into habits. Number one attribute of human nature, of human behavior, is habitual behavior. Did you ever circle back around to see if you really closed the garage door?
I've done it.
Yeah, we've done it more than once, right? Okay, that's habitual behavior. And once we develop it, we have to force ourselves out of it. I hear so many speakers. My wife gets on me about this, but speakers that use a lot of ums and ers and ahs, I just can't stick with them. Can't hang with them. But if they were to listen to it, I give them a clicker, sounds like a cricket. And I say, click this every time you said, Oh, I didn't know all right, you didn't know you were doing it. I'll take this recording when it's done, pick it apart. Gee, you should have said this, you could have said that better. As long as we're CQI, continuous quality improvement, as long as we're working on this presentation was better than the one yesterday, but not as good as the one tomorrow. then we're okay.
Thank you for sharing that. I think you're truly inspiring and an amazing person. I find it incredible that someone with your experience is still looking to get better every single time, every single rep, every single speaking engagement, whatever the case is.
Have to.
It's really like you're the, I hope I can say this, the Michael Jordan of speaking.
I will take that in a heartbeat. Yes, absolutely. And thank you for that.
You're welcome. And I mean it. And I know we're a little tight on time. I would love to chat and learn even more about your story. I think you have a phenomenal story. Your wealth of knowledge is just like something that I would love to be able to tap into on demand. Like,
Okay.
Hey, Chuck, I just had this call. What do I do here? which we know, you're busy with your speaking engagements and your training and consulting. I'm sure you do some of that as well. Are you working on any books at the moment, or?
Several people have asked me that, and right now I'm between books, as we say.
Okay.
There's one that I wrote some time ago. I want to go back and rewrite it. And I learned the other day, The Theory of 21 was published in 1984. And I got a message 2 weeks ago, that book changed my life. Is it still in print? Well, no, it's not in print. I mean, I don't even have a copy. I do have a copy of it. So I'm thinking it's time to revise that. Let's update it. It's still The Theory of 21. Most people are naysayers. But gee, with all the tools that we have now, the internet, we can accelerate running through those 20 people that say no and find that one person that says yes. And I try to respond to every email I get. I can't, but they'll come in, and there's something about, I look at the message, sometimes just the subject line, I need to address this. There's just something intuitively, really need to follow up. But I am where I am because people helped me. You are where you are because people helped you. And if they ask for too much, they're not looking for help.
I agree. I think when I ask people for help, I feel like, or I hope they're willing to help me because one, they see someone that's going to take action on the knowledge they're sharing, but then two, someone that came in prepared and
there
there's
we go.
direct questions or very specific questions, not, hey, how do I become successful or something along those lines.
For years, I'm in a lot of hotel rooms, and I was watching the news, and Henry Kissinger came on. He's got the unusual voice, and he negotiated a peace treaty for Vietnam and so forth. And I thought, man, Henry Kissinger, wow, what a mind. If I met Henry Kissinger, what would I ask him? So I came up with a question. In less than a year, I was in an airport club, and they paged Henry Kissinger. I went over and sat down. Could I have 3 minutes of your time? I just have one question to ask. Amazing. Those opportunities are there. Vince Lombardi said, when a prepared man meets opportunity, others call it luck. We've met a lot of people. I had a seatmate one time, and I could kick myself. Interesting guy, started talking. Ty Reese, rapper. Movie star, not star, but he's a B-list probably. But I thought, man, if I probed a little deeper, how did he get there? And the one question he asked was, what can you do to help me in my career? I thought, wow, kind of rapper. I listened to smooth jazz coming over here this afternoon. That's what I'm into. But gee, he's a student. Now, what is the one thing every teacher needs in order to be a teacher?
I would say patience.
And most people would. They would say knowledge.
Uh-huh.
You need a student.
Very true.
And when you say, you think I have depth and things to share, so do you. I'll have 2 seatmates on Thursday flying back to Phoenix. There's a story there. And I can just tune them out. Or I could start asking questions. It's amazing how much we can learn just by interacting with people. And some of it is not very valuable in terms of practical use, but gosh, we can learn so much.
You might have just shared your hole-in-one with us, but we end each show with what we call a hole-in-one, which is your biggest piece of advice that you could give someone that they can implement in either their life or business today. Do you have something that you'd like to share, or do you feel like you've already given us that?
Well, I've told you about everything I know. However, know what you want. Now, don't say big car, big house. That's not what you want. Most people don't know what they want. If time and money were no object, if you had plenty of everything, what would you spend your time doing? You see, when I was AT&T's top salesperson, I was fed up with the job, dreading Mondays, looking forward to Fridays, and didn't really like what I was doing. And this lady came up and she said, well, if you could do anything you wanted to, what would it be? And I said, write and speak. I don't know where that came from. And she said, why don't you do that? So I quit my job and became a speaker. And for the record and your listeners, that's backwards. Keep the day job until you get that speaking thing going, because it doesn't pay at first. But yeah, where's your heart? Where's your mind? And I had one person ask me, what do you want on your tombstone? That's one way to think about it. I said, I wanted to say he was real old. Everybody leaves a legacy. Let me leave it with that. And that legacy is not bigger houses, faster horses, boats, and whatever. Those are nice. But it's what you leave in the hearts and the minds of the individuals that you influence. The hearts, how they feel, and the minds, what they know, of the people that you influence. And everyone is influencing more people than they realize. When you go into a leadership position, that number grows exponentially. When you have a podcast, you can't measure it. You have no idea. See, somebody's going to listen to this or watch it, and they're going to tell somebody, and they're going to tell somebody. And by the time it's told the second time, well, I heard somebody say, or I heard somewhere, authorship gets lost. But those are the seeds that you are planting. Those are the seeds that I'm planting. And it's all about nurturing other people, nurturing their ideas, and helping them grow to be all they're capable of being.
Chuck, thank you for sharing that. You've given me something to think about. I enjoyed the entire conversation. But
me too.
But just kind of really thinking about what I want out of life. And I'm sure listeners and viewers are thinking the same. It's something we don't do often.
Nope.
I think it's important to do regularly. I maybe do it once a year, but I'm due for it.
Yes. And keep in mind, it changes. When you reach a pinnacle, you reach the top of the mountain, you are able to see the next mountain. You couldn't see it down the slope. But now, there's more. And there's more. You're going to go all the way to the top.
I hope so. And I hope that's not one of the sales strategies we went over. Thank you so much for your time, Chuck. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.